right, hello everybody, and welcome back to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today is episode 151, and I'm really excited for today's episode because I finally have somebody to co-host with me. I recruited my friend Tim Humphrey, a Discogs user. Tim is an OG of the Discogs world. He's been reviewing records since I was probably a toddler. And as you can see from, or as you will see from his background, he has an even more ridiculous collection than me. So I thought he would be the perfect person to have co-host and come and do some record reviews with me today. So thank you for coming, Tim. And today's topic of choice is going to be the very prolific and classy label Mosaic. Mosaic was founded and is curated, or I'm sorry, it's founded in 1997 and is curated by Steve O'Sullivan. And I'm not as familiar with the older part of the catalog. Tim's a little bit older than me, so his forte is a little bit more towards the late 90s and 2000s, where I didn't really latch on to Mosaic until probably 2017. So I think we're going to be bringing like a really nice mix to the table here. And with that, I'm going to, before I hand it over to Tim, I just want to say there's a few things about the Mosaic label that I really enjoy, and it's to me it comes down to the attention to detail. So I have one of my favorite records. This is the Fletcher release that has the Mike Schommer on the B side, but I wanted to give an example or use it as an example for why I love Mosaic. So as you can see here, really, really sharp, very sharp labels and nice color choices. So it kind of appeals to the color collector in me, and I'm sure other people as well. I notice when I grab the edge of the vinyl, it's not squared off on the corners like some are. So it's got like a nice rounded edge here. And there's another little subtle nuance to it is the tracks that have two sides, the needle will get to the end of one of the tracks and sort of just pause there and hang out in a silent locked groove. So it's DJ friendly. It stops you from that accidental bleed through into the next track as you're like fading out and when you're DJing live. And if you're listening at home and you're in that kind of collector mode where you want to listen on your hi-fi setup, the needle does not run in towards the paper. It stays and hangs out at the end of the track. So all of these things plus really nice inner sleeves that have like the little plastic cushion inside make this the collector's dream. And I didn't intentionally end up collecting Mosaic records. It was just something that started to happen, and I started to realize that, along the lines of something like Sushi Tech, this is a really, really classy label that really has its shit together, and I love when they put new releases out. So that being said, I'm now going to hand it over to Tim, who is going to review his first record, and we're going to alternate with our picks as we move through this episode. Tim, go ahead.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. First off, I just want to say thanks for having me. It's awesome to talk to you again, and I'm glad we're having the chance to do this after our first meeting, and of course, me moving to the area and you coming over and playing records is something I hope we can keep doing. I need a friend to play some records with out here. Kind of new to the area out here. But the first track I wanted to talk about is on the early one. It's from an artist named Aubrey, and it's actually the fourth record in the on the label, and it's called Contact Funk, and the track is get my notes here. It's part two. So all the tracks have part one, part two, part three, part four on it, and the track I wanted to highlight was part two. So Aubrey's a UK producer that I heard about in the early '90s on a small UK label that had a lot of success called Ozone Recordings, And then later on, Aubrey was on Buzz with Carl Craig and things like that. So I heard of his name pretty early. I don't have a lot of his records. I have a couple from the late '90s. I did buy his last full length record in 2019. It was solid. He kind of got into the little bit of the loopy techno in 2000, 2004 that may have kind of deterred him and changed off his style from his more classier Detroit style. And that's kind of one of the ones that I wanted to highlight with this pick. So again, it's track number 2, I believe, which is called Part 2, and just classic Detroit sound. It sounds like a very programmed track for the time. It's very uplifting. It's very smooth. It's not over the top. It's nice and clean. 5.5 minute track, not too long, not too short. Nice one to mix. Very straightforward, but has a nice solid middle to late '90s sound where it's very clean, but it's very still has a rawness to it, which is cool, and it's very uplifting in a kind of subtle way, which just really brings to the timelessness of the track for me. And with having said that, let's hear a sample.
Thank you for that review, Tim. I just want to say also, looking at your background, I love it, man. You definitely outdone me. My pick, like I said, I'm focused more towards the more recent end of the catalog. So my first pick here is from a duo that I think made its first appearance on this release, and this is the Rhythm Method series. This is number 5, and the artist is Hidden Sequence. Hidden Sequence is a duo of producers. I couldn't figure out where they were from, but I did see that it's 2 guys that are working as a team when I stalked their Facebook. And the track that I wanted to feature here is called 3 Days Cooler. It takes up the entire B-side of the record, and the first thing that came to mind when I was listening to it was almost dub techno minimalism. You could argue that it's a little bit sparse, and somebody that was being critical of it might say, it's like a little bit boring and drawn out, but I kind of appreciate it for that. I think there's a very specific use case for this record, which would be like in the very early stages of a big room club set. It goes on for maybe, if I had to guess, the track duration is probably something like 8 minutes, and it has just enough elements to keep you engaged and to keep the dance floor kind of on that low key sway factor. It's got like a big kick, a nice bass line, and I think my favorite elements out of it are the reverbed percussions, which for some reason kind of throw me back to listening to Danny Tenaglia's bigger records in 2000 and 2001. There's kind of like a tribalistic Satoshi Tomi grimy warehouse vibe that I think is really what sells it for me.
All right, so my second pick is on the Dimensions EP, which is actually the sixth release on the label by Mark Ambrose. For those that know Mark Ambrose, he's probably in my top five tech house producers of all time for me. He's right up there with like Time Rider and Chris Brand, which is Ramdu Project, Ramdu Kids, and his style is just so clean. If you guys don't know Crayon Records, check out Crayon Records. He must have over 50 to 75 releases over the last 25 years. Just top notch tech house producers. He's the kind. He's almost the ideal tech house producers. Like the tech house genre is so I wouldn't say bastardized, but it's just there's so many different definitions of tech house. And I think when I think of the ultimate tech house, yeah, I think it feels like it originates in like 96, 97. Of course, with the end of Plink Plonk Records and the start of End Records. So Lalo and Bushwhacker and those type of artists. And Mark Crayon is kind of right in that field of that UK sound, where house just blends perfectly with techno. And so the title track, should I say the first track, is called Signs and Lights, and it's really kind of a bouncy track. It might be actually the most wanted or desired record on Mosaic when you look at the want list on Discogs. Um, I normally don't like bouncy bass lines and bouncy tracks but there's something everything besides the bouncy bass line, bouncy beat, I love. Not that I don't hate it. It's just not something I would normally kind of gravitate to. Maybe that's what makes the track kind of unique in a way, but in a way, especially at the time, I'm sure when it came out, ambient house was sort of on its way out by the mid '90s. But this one stays in that vein, and really, it ties a lot to what's going on right now in techno and having that kind of Balearic feel and that kind of ambient house feel and the kind of the more laid back feel. And it has this particular sound and it kind of sounds aquatic and it just lends to the timelessness so well where um, it's just really beautiful track. I believe it got reissued, but don't quote me on that. But the first two tracks I actually picked on Mosaic, on the Aubrey and this one, are actually in my want list. So they're not actually records that I have. But I just, when you have a big collection, you also have a big want list, and I just haven't got around to those yet. But pick 3 and 4, I actually do have. But no, you made a great. I wanted to mention you made a great statement about the condition of the records. You always do a great job of analyzing the cut of the vinyl and as a DJ and stuff like that. And I don't often pick up on that, but I definitely notice the edges of the records are very clean. They don't feel like they're going to cut your hand, and the way they space out the vinyl, so you can see it like even during the dark and things like that. And the next record actually has something I'll talk a little bit about that on the next, because that has a kind of the way that's cut is really unique in itself. But again, back to Mark Ambrose, and this is track number 1, Signs and Lights from 1997.
Tim mentioned tech house there, and that's actually a great segue into my next pick. Again, I'm still in the Rhythm Method series, which I think launched in about 2020 on Mosaic. And here, my pick is another gorgeous one. I'm going to be honest, I halfway bought this just for the color scheme because I really love the aqua on dark blue. And there's a sneaky artist on here that, as far as I can tell, this is his first release. This is Rico Sante with his track called Deep Drifting. This is the epitome of, I think, the sound of the Mosaic label, at least the modern sound, which is that dub techno and tech house hybrid. Every once in a while, Mosaic seems to go. It seems like they'll go into house every once in a while, and eh, maybe Tim can speak to this later in the episode. I don't know if they ever went through a glitch phase in the early 2000s and late 90s. Maybe they did, but now it seems like dub techno fused with tech house, specifically using modern elements, is their forte, and I just love them for that. And this Rico Sante track, like I said, it's an artist that had came out of left field. I don't know if Mosaic is now a vehicle for Steve to bring talent to the forefront, but props if that's the mission, because it's working. The track itself reminds me of a track that was on Roger Garrison's label called Irenic. The artist was Jago, and his track was called Bull Dub, Boole dub, and it just had this like grimy, like if I had to like pigeonhole what new tech house sounds like, I would say that Jago's Bull Dub is a great example of that. I think that came out in maybe 2018, I'm guessing. Rico Sante, for some reason, throws me back to that because as soon as the record starts, you're right into the sick bass line. And it has enough to go on its own just with that bass line. But where it really seals the deal and just turns into this like wonderful Sunday afternoon type track is the atmospherics that come in. There's a very ethereal vibe to it that just sounds really sincere and is really just icing on the cake.
All right, so the third pick for me from Mosaic is actually the first record I bought from Mosaic in 2000. It's actually number, I believe it's 38 in the catalog. So it's actually a joint EP, and the reason why I bought it because around 2000 I was huge into Scandinavian dub techno. So the Iceland sound, like Octel, which is actually on this record, and Exos and Yagia and all those great Icelandic dub techno producers, Scandinavian producers, and things like that. Just huge into that sound, and that's actually the way I found Mosaic. So my favorite track, probably on the label, is actually not the Octel track. It's actually the other side. It's by an artist named Nick Reeve, and the track's called Here. You have to excuse me how I say this. Herers and Heroes. I've never heard that word said. Here, Heroes and Heroes. I guess the track is it's almost like a dub version of a dub track. It is so deep and sleazy, and just very minimalistic. It's got a really cool cut where the track plays backwards, and then kind of has a space, probably about an inch, on the break, and then it kind of goes into the rest of the track. So it kind of smooths past a little bit of that, covers the whole side. It's about a 7 minute track, really deep and sleazy, dub, very dub. It's definitely a really, I wouldn't say it's a dark track, but it's verging on it. As it starts, you think, oh, this is going to be a pretty minimal track. It has a kind of a airy sound towards the end that kind of brings it a little bit out of the darkness, but super cool track. I actually tried to find it just to show it, so I could show the run out groove, but I couldn't find it. But that's actually the first record I bought, 2000, Mosaic number 30. I always like to get. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's actually a limited edition. It's on the limited edition number 2 vinyl. So I guess they had a limited edition. I'm not familiar with the other ones, but this was limited edition number 2. And here's the track by Reeve.
All right, and my last pick for today is one of the, actually, I think this is the most recent release on Mosaic, other than Steve O'Sullivan's new single that just dropped this week. This is a colored vinyl featuring on one side a remix by Steve O'Sullivan of Hidden Sequence, who I mentioned earlier in the episode, but that's not the track that I'm featuring here. I'm featuring another artist called Sub Basics, and their track is, or actually, I don't know if it's one person or two, but Sub Basics track is called Quarters on here. I normally would shy away from the colored vinyl, but this one is just, this is just a home run. This is not in any way compromised by the fact that it's colored. Sub Basics seems like another example of Steve O'Sullivan finding some talent and letting them represent themselves on his label. Sub Basics has been producing since 2014, a mixture of vinyl and digital. I never saw that producer mentioned anywhere on any forums or anything like that, so I feel like this kind of is a breakout for Sub Basics in some ways. This is the DBS 01, and DBS 02 is set to drop in 2 weeks, and I'm dead set on buying that because I'm just so smitten with Sub Basics sound. The track is relatively static and flat. You're not going to find any breakdowns in there, but it kind of doesn't matter. It's more of a hypnosis. We're just going to lull you into this state. If I had to describe it, it's basically like new NU dub techno, new dub techno, where all of the vanilla flavors have been and sounds have been chased out and replaced with more modernized versions. So yes, you still get the dub tinged bass line, and you'll get some of the traditional skanks. I guess that's what the sounds would be called. But the other decorations and elements give it a much more modern feel, and I really just adore it for that.
fourth and final pick, I picked two that I was in my want list, and I picked two that I have. And my fourth pick is by Mike Schommer. Invitation to Love. The first track covers the whole first side. Just a beautiful dub techno track. Just stays in the sweet spot. Not too much I can describe about his style. He's very meticulous. His sounds are very polished, very clean. My, obviously, Mike Schoner's well known for being on Deep Chord label. Just a legendary producer just from being on that label. And he doesn't bring out too much music, so when he does bring out something, it's definitely something that you should check out because it's just very often that he brings out an EP. If I can think off the top of my head, he might have 3 or 4 EPs in the last 4 or 5 years, and maybe a couple remixes. The great thing about Mike Schommer too is I got a chance to work with him on a couple projects. Just asking for him to remix something for a friend, and he was willing to do it. And I got a chance to write his "Come Home," the write up for that for Grayscale Records. And a lot of times when you meet your heroes and you might be disappointed by them, like Mike Schommer. Shout out to you, man. You're a great guy. And I mean, he's just got a wealth of experience and knowledge when it comes to new wave music. So we get along really great, and he's very nice person and great track. So definitely wanted to give a shout out to Mike Schommer. This is the newest Mosaic that I have. It's from 2017, Invitation to Love.
Thank you for that, Tim. That is a great record. I'm not sure if I reviewed that before, but that's definitely on my top shelf in my dub techno world. So excellent, excellent picks for today. We're going to wrap the episode up here. Tim, I'm so thankful that you came and joined me today. I feel like we're on the same wavelength and we're just sitting here talking about records that we're obsessed with, the sound that we just can't get enough of. So I really appreciate your presence on this, and I hope that we can continue to do more projects in the future. Big thanks to Steve O'Sullivan for curating this wonderful label. We love your tunes, and this label is absolutely badass. So thanks again, Steve, and we'll wrap it up here. Take care, everyone.